The lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel in Manhattan was buzzing with the usual afternoon crowd. Business people rushed through with their designer luggage. Tourists took photos of the crystal chandeliers, and hotel staff moved smoothly from one guest to another. At the front desk, a man in his early 40s stood waiting to check in. Everything about him screamed wealth. His suit was perfectly tailored, probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. His watch caught the light every time he moved his wrist. The leather briefcase beside him looked like it belonged in a luxury magazine. "Welcome to the Grand Meridian, sir. We have your reservation ready," the hotel manager said with a practiced smile. "That will be $450 for the deposit." The man pulled out his wallet with casual confidence. He'd done this 1,000 times before. The black credit card slid across the marble counter with barely a sound. The manager swiped it. Then her smile flickered. She swiped it again. "I'm sorry, sir. This card seems to be declined. Would you like to try another one?" For a moment, the man just stared at her. Declined? That was impossible. He tried to keep his expression neutral as he pulled out another card. This one was platinum from a different bank. The manager swiped it. The same result. "Sir, this one is also not going through." People in line behind him were starting to notice. He could feel their eyes on his back. The manager's smile was getting tighter, more forced. He tried a third card, then a fourth. Each time, the same humiliating beep from the card machine: declined, declined, declined. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside if you cannot provide a valid form of payment," the manager said, her voice louder now. Professional, but with an edge to it. The man felt heat rising to his face. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not here in front of all these people. "There must be some mistake," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm James Patterson. I own Patterson Technologies. Perhaps you've heard of it." The manager's expression didn't change. "I'm sure this is just a technical issue, Mr. Patterson, but hotel policy requires—" "Are you seriously going to stand there and tell me my cards don't work?" His voice was rising now, frustration bleeding through. "Do you have any idea who I am?" A security guard started walking toward the desk. The whispers from the other guests grew louder. Someone pulled out their phone. Standing in line behind this whole scene was a young woman in her late teens. She wore a simple housekeeping uniform from one of the hotels down the street. Her shift had just ended, and she was still tired from scrubbing bathrooms and changing sheets for the past 8 hours. She'd been watching this unfold with growing concern. She recognized that look on the man's face. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the specific kind of panic that comes when your whole world suddenly doesn't make sense. The manager was saying something about calling security when the young woman stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I can help." Everyone turned to look at her. The manager, the security guard, James Patterson himself. He looked at her uniform, then at her face. She couldn't have been older than 19 or 20. "I can pay for his room," she continued, pulling out her own wallet. It was worn at the edges, held together with hope more than leather at this point. James blinked at her. "What? No, I can't let you—" "It's okay," she said, already handing her card to the manager. "Everyone has bad days. Technology fails sometimes, right?" The manager looked skeptical but took the card. The young woman held her breath. She knew exactly how much was on that card. $500. It was every penny of her emergency fund, money she'd been saving for months in case something went wrong with her little sister or their apartment. The card machine beeped. "Approved. That's $450 charged to your card." "Miss," the manager said, clearly surprised. She handed over the room key to James. "Mr. Patterson, you're all set for room 1842. James took the key but couldn't take his eyes off the young woman. Thank you, but I need to know your name. I need to pay you back immediately." She smiled, and it was genuine. "I'm Elena Rodriguez, and don't worry about it right now. Just sort out whatever's going on with your banks." She pulled out a small notepad from her uniform pocket and scribbled down her number. "You can reach me here when you're ready. This is—" "I don't understand. Why would you do this for a complete stranger?" Elena shrugged. "My mom used to say that kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything. Besides, you look like you're having the worst day of your life. Nobody should have to deal with that alone." Before James could respond, she gave him a small wave and walked toward the exit. He stood there in the middle of the fancy hotel lobby, holding a room key paid for by a housekeeper who'd just given up her entire emergency fund for him. The manager was already calling the next guest. The security guard had walked away. The moment was over, just like that. But for James Patterson, billionaire tech mogul, everything had just changed. He looked down at the small piece of paper in his hand with Elena's phone number. Then he looked at the room key. Then back at the exit where she'd disappeared. For the first time in 20 years, someone had helped him not because of who he was, but despite having no idea who he was. Elena hadn't asked for his business card, hadn't asked what he did for a living, hadn't tried to network or make connections, she'd just helped. Simple as that. James made his way to the elevator, his mind spinning. He needed to call his lawyers, his accountants, his board members. He needed to figure out why every single one of his cards had been declined. But first, he needed to understand what had just happened. In room 1842, he finally got through to his chief financial officer. James, thank God. We've been trying to reach you. There's been a situation with the company. Douglas initiated a hostile takeover this morning. He's frozen all your accounts pending a board review. Legal is working on it, but... James stopped listening. Douglas, his business partner of 15 years. The man he'd trusted with everything. He walked to the window and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, Elena Rodriguez was probably heading home on the subway. $50 left to her name until her next paycheck, and she'd smiled while doing it. His phone buzzed with message after message. Emergency meetings, legal documents, crisis management. But James kept thinking about that smile. What kind of person gives away their last bit of security to help a stranger? He was about to find out that the answer to that question would change his entire life. James spent the entire night on the phone with lawyers. The picture they painted was grim. His business partner, Douglas Chen, had been planning this for months. Board members had been convinced that James was making reckless decisions. Documents had been forged. Votes had been manipulated, and the result? James Patterson, founder and CEO of Patterson Technologies, worth over $3 billion on paper, couldn't access a single penny of it. How long? James asked his lead attorney at 3 a.m. Best case scenario? 6 weeks. Worst case? Could be 6 months. 6 months. James looked around the hotel room that a 19-year-old housekeeper had paid for. He'd been staying in rooms like this his entire adult life, never thinking twice about the cost. Now he was sitting here, unable to even buy himself breakfast in the morning. His wallet had $83 in cash. That was it. That was all the money James Patterson could actually spend right now. He finally fell asleep around 5 a.m. and woke up 4 hours later to his phone ringing. It was his assistant calling to quit. Douglas had offered her double the salary. She was the third employee to jump ship that morning. James ordered room service out of habit, then had to cancel it when he realized $83 wouldn't cover the bill. Instead, he got dressed and went out to find actual affordable food for the first time in decades. The coffee shop on the corner had a breakfast special for $6. James couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at a menu and had to think about prices. He ate his eggs and toast slowly, watching people rush by on the street outside. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going. Everyone had purpose, direction. James had neither. His whole identity had been tied up in his company, his wealth, his status. Without those things, who was he? He pulled out the piece of paper Elena had given him. Her handwriting was neat, careful. The kind of handwriting someone develops when they can't afford to waste paper making mistakes. He should call her. Pay her back. That was the right thing to do, but he couldn't, not yet. First, he needed to understand something. James spent the rest of the day tracking down information. He made calls, pulled strings with contacts who still believed in him, asked favors from people who owed him from years ago. By evening, he had a picture of who Elena Rodriguez was. She worked at the Palace Hotel, 6 blocks away. Housekeeping staff. Minimum wage plus tips, which in housekeeping weren't much. She worked 8-hour shifts 5 days a week, and then, according to his research, she worked second shifts at a diner in Queens. 2 jobs. James did the math. Even working herself to exhaustion, Elena probably made less in a year than James used to spend on a weekend vacation. And she'd given him $450 without hesitation. The next day, James found himself walking to the Palace Hotel. He waited across the street, feeling slightly ridiculous like some kind of stalker, but he needed to see her world. Needed to understand. Elena came out at 3:30, still in her uniform. She looked tired. Really tired. The kind of tired that comes from scrubbing other people's dirt for 8 straight hours. But when a coworker said something to her, she laughed. Genuine, bright laughter. James followed her at a distance. She stopped at a grocery store, and he watched through the window as she carefully compared prices, putting items back, choosing cheaper alternatives. Her grocery trip took 40 minutes because she was making every dollar stretch as far as it could go. From there, she took the subway to Queens. James followed, feeling more out of place with each stop further from Manhattan. His expensive suit attracted stares. A few people looked at him with suspicion. Elena got off in a neighborhood James had never been to. The buildings were older, some with cracked windows and faded paint. But there were also flower boxes in windows, murals on walls, and the sound of kids playing basketball in a nearby court. She stopped at a small apartment building and went inside. James stood on the sidewalk, feeling like an intruder. What was he even doing here? He was about to leave when he saw her appear in a window on the 3rd floor. She was hugging a younger girl, maybe 15 or 16. The girl showed Elena something on her phone and they both laughed. Elena kissed the top of the girl's head, and even from the street, James could see the love there. His phone buzzed. Another lawyer, another update. The legal battle was getting uglier. Douglas was playing dirty, making accusations, dragging James's name through the mud. James looked back up at the window. Elena was in the kitchen now, cooking something while the younger girl did homework at a small table. It was such a simple scene, so ordinary, and yet there was something about it that made James's chest hurt. He'd built a billion-dollar company. He'd made deals that changed industries. He'd been on the cover of magazines and given speeches to thousands of people. But when was the last time he'd sat down and just had dinner with someone who cared about him? When was the last time someone had kissed his head like that? When was the last time he'd been in a home that actually felt like a home? His penthouse apartment was beautiful. All modern furniture and expensive art. But it was cold. Empty. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard laughter in it. James walked to the diner where Elena worked her second shift. It was a small place, nothing fancy. Red vinyl booths and a counter with spinning stools. The kind of place that probably hadn't changed its decor since 1985. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. At 7 o'clock, Elena walked in wearing a different uniform. She tied an apron around her waist and got to work immediately. She moved with efficiency, taking orders, delivering food, refilling drinks. But she also talked to the customers. Really talked to them. She knew their names, asked about their kids. Remembered that the old man in booth 3 liked his coffee with exactly 2 sugars. She treated everyone with the same respect and kindness she'd shown James at the hotel. It wasn't an act. This was just who she was. When she finally noticed James sitting at the counter, her eyes went wide. "Mr. Patterson, what are you doing here?" "Please call me James," he said. "And I came to say thank you properly." Elena glanced at her manager, then back to James. "I'm working right now, but I know. I'll wait," and he did. He sat at that counter for 3 hours, ordering coffee after coffee, leaving a $20 tip that he really couldn't afford. He watched Elena work, watched her make everyone around her feel seen and valued. When her shift finally ended at 10, she sat down across from him in a booth. "You didn't have to wait all this time," she said. "Yes, I did. Elena, I need to know why you helped me. We're complete strangers." She thought about it for a moment. "My mom died 2 years ago. Cancer, the medical bills destroyed us financially. I'm raising my little sister Sophia alone now. And it's hard, really hard. But during Mom's treatment, there were people who helped us. Strangers who paid for meals, who covered small bills, who just showed up when we needed them. Mom always said that kindness creates ripples. One person helps another and it spreads out. So when I saw you struggling at that hotel, I just thought, maybe I could be someone's ripple." James felt something crack open inside his chest. "I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. She was amazing. She's the one who taught me that money isn't what makes you rich." They talked for another hour. Elena told him about Sophia, about her dreams of one day opening a community center in the neighborhood. James found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone. About the loneliness at the top. About realizing his business partner, the man he'd trusted for 15 years, had betrayed him. About not knowing who his real friends were anymore. "Sounds like this situation might be a gift," Elena said. "A gift? I just lost everything." "No," she said gently. "You lost access to your money. That's not the same as everything. Now you get to find out who you really are when all that other stuff is stripped away. James left the diner that night with Elena's words echoing in his head. He walked back to his hotel through streets that felt different somehow. More real, more alive. In his room paid for by a housekeeper's kindness, James Patterson began to realize that maybe losing everything was exactly what he needed to find something he'd been missing all along. 3 weeks passed and James's situation hadn't improved. If anything, it had gotten worse. Douglas had convinced the board that James was mentally unstable. Emails had been leaked to the press, taken out of context to make James look erratic and reckless. His reputation, built over 20 years, was crumbling in real time on social media. The lawyers kept saying they were making progress, but James was running out of money. His $83 had dwindled to $12. The hotel was starting to ask questions about extending his stay. Soon he'd have nowhere to go. But something strange was happening. Instead of falling apart, James was changing. He started eating at cheap diners. He learned which bodegas had the best deals. He discovered that the public library had free internet and comfortable chairs. He walked everywhere instead of taking taxis, and his expensive leather shoes developed holes in the soles. And through it all, he kept running into Elena. Not accidentally. James sought her out. He'd show up at the diner during her shifts, order the cheapest thing on the menu, and nurse it for hours while they talked during her breaks. He started helping Sophia with her homework. The 15-year-old was brilliant but struggling with math, and James found himself explaining calculus concepts in ways her teachers never had. "You're really good at this," Elena said one evening, watching James help Sophia understand derivatives. "Have you ever thought about teaching?" "I taught myself coding when I was young," James said. "But no, I've never taught anyone else. Feels good, though." Sophia looked up from her notebook. "Mr. Patterson, why do you come here every night? Don't you have, important business stuff to do?" James glanced at Elena, then back at Sophia. "Right now, this feels more important than any business meeting I've ever had." And it was true. Sitting in their small apartment, eating Elena's homemade rice and beans, because that's what they could afford, helping a smart kid with her homework, while her sister worked herself to exhaustion to give her a better life. This felt more real than anything James had done in years. But reality came crashing back one Tuesday evening. James was at the diner when Elena came in looking devastated. Her eyes were red, and she was clutching a piece of paper in her hand. "What's wrong?" James asked immediately. She handed him the paper. It was an eviction notice. 30 days to vacate the apartment. "The landlord is selling the building," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to move. But James, I've been looking at apartments. Everything costs at least double what we pay now. There's no way I can afford it. I don't know what we're going to do." James read through the notice, his mind already racing through possibilities. Then he stopped himself. A month ago, he would have just thrown money at this problem. Written a check, bought the building, solved it with cash, but he had no cash. And even if he did, he was starting to understand that Elena wouldn't want that. She had pride, dignity. She wanted to solve her own problems. Still, he had to do something. "Let me help," James said. "Not with money. But I know people. I know the real estate market. I can make calls, negotiate, find options." Elena looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Why would you do that for us?" "Because you did something for me when you had no reason to. And because—" James paused, searching for the right words. "Because you've shown me what actually matters in life. Let me at least try to help." Over the next 2 weeks, James threw himself into solving Elena's housing crisis. He called every contact he had left in the city. Many didn't return his calls. His reputation was too damaged. But a few did, old friends who still believed in him. He found a real estate developer who owed him a favor from years ago. The man was building affordable housing in Queens and had units that weren't filled yet. James spent hours convincing him to hold one for Elena at a rent she could actually afford. "I can't pay you for this favor right now," James admitted, "but I can offer you something else. When my legal situation resolves, I'll consult on your next 3 projects. Free." I'll bring my expertise, my connections, everything. The developer considered it. You know what? You're different than you used to be, Patterson. I don't know what happened to you, but I like this version better. Deal. James also started teaching Elena about money management. Not because she was bad with money, she was actually remarkably good at stretching every dollar. But she'd never had enough money to think about investing, about building for the future. You're brilliant at managing scarcity, James explained one evening. But you've never had the chance to learn about managing abundance. When you do get more money someday, you'll need different skills. Elena laughed. Abundance, James, I make $9 an hour cleaning toilets. For now. But that's not going to be forever. Trust me. James also came up with an idea for Elena to make extra money. She was patient, good at explaining things, and smart. He taught her how to set up online tutoring sessions using free platforms. Within a week, she had her first 3 students, mostly kids from the neighborhood whose parents couldn't afford expensive tutoring services. Charge $15 an hour, James advised. It's affordable for them, and if you do 6 hours a week, that's an extra $360 a month. That could make the difference. Elena followed his advice, and slowly, her income started to grow. Not by much, but enough to breathe a little easier. Meanwhile, James was learning things too. He learned how to cook cheap, nutritious meals. He learned which day of the week the grocery store marked down produce. He learned how to fix things instead of just replacing them. He learned to ask for help when he needed it. One afternoon, James was at the public library using the free internet when a young guy recognized him. Hey, you're James Patterson, right? The tech guy who got screwed over by his partner? James tensed, expecting an insult or a lecture, but the guy surprised him. Man, I just wanted to say I've been following your story. The media is destroying you, but I work in tech and I know your actual track record. You built something real. Douglas Chen is a snake. A lot of us in the industry know it. Thanks, James said, genuinely touched. That means more than you know. Also, the guy continued, I saw you the other day at the community center in Queens helping kids with coding. That was cool, man. Not many people at your level would do that. After he left, James sat there thinking. He'd been so focused on his legal battle, on getting his money back, that he hadn't fully processed what was happening. He was becoming part of a community, a real community, not just a network of wealthy contacts. People in Elena's neighborhood had started to recognize him. The bodega owner gave him extra fruit sometimes. The basketball kids called him Mr. P and asked him to referee their games. The elderly woman in Elena's building always had a smile for him. He was known here, not for his money or his company, but for being someone who showed up, someone who helped, someone who cared. It was the strangest feeling. James had been famous before. His face had been in magazines. People had taken his picture at events, but he'd never felt seen the way he felt seen now. That evening, he was helping Sophia with her college application essays when Elena came home early from work crying. What happened? James and Sophia both asked at once. Nothing bad, Elena said, wiping her eyes. Something good. Really good. The manager at the hotel told me I'm getting promoted to front desk clerk. It's $5 more an hour. And James, they said it was because I've been taking those online customer service courses you told me about. They noticed. Someone actually noticed me. Sophia screamed with joy and hugged her sister. James felt something warm spread through his chest. See? He said softly. I told you things could change. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. You know what's funny? A few months ago you were this rich guy whose card got declined. Now you're sitting in my apartment wearing shoes with holes in them, eating our leftovers. And somehow you seem happier than you probably were before. James thought about that. His lawyers were still fighting. He still had no access to his billions. He was essentially broke. His reputation was in shambles. His business partner had stolen his company. By every measure that used to matter to him, he was failing. But Elena was right. He was happier. You know what I learned? James said. I spent 20 years building an empire, But I forgot to build a life. You can't pay people to care about you. You can't buy real friendship. You can't purchase purpose. Those things, the things that actually matter, they're free. You just have to show up for them. Sophia smiled at him. That's deep, Mr. P. Your sister taught me that. She paid $450 she couldn't afford to help a stranger. That taught me more about success than 2 decades in business. Later that night, after leaving Elena's apartment, James checked his phone. There was a message from his lawyer. The legal team had found some documents that could help their case. It might be another month, but they were making real progress now. James should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt something unexpected. He felt nervous, because getting his money back meant his old life would be waiting for him. And he wasn't sure he wanted that life anymore. But he had time to figure that out. For now, he had a calculus lesson to prepare for Sophia, a real estate negotiation to finish for Elena, and a shift at the community center where he'd volunteered to teach basic computer skills to older. 6 weeks had passed since James's card was declined at the hotel. 6 weeks of living like a completely different person, and in that time something unexpected had happened. He and Elena had become real friends, not the kind of friends James used to have in his old life, where every relationship felt like networking, and every conversation had an agenda. This was different. This was real. They fell into a comfortable routine. James would show up at Elena's apartment most evenings around 6. Sophia would be doing homework, and Elena would be getting ready for her night shift at the diner. James started bringing groceries sometimes, always careful to buy things on sale so Elena wouldn't feel like he was showing off money he didn't have. "You know you don't have to do this," Elena said one evening as James unpacked a bag of pasta. "Canned tomatoes and day-old bread from the discount bakery. I know I don't have to. I want to. You paid for my hotel room, remember? I'm just balancing the scales. James, you've helped us find an apartment, taught Sophia enough math to raise her grade 2 full letters, and fixed our leaking sink. The scales are pretty balanced. The sink doesn't count. I watched a YouTube video. Anyone could have done that." Sophia looked up from her homework. "Mr. P, you literally had to watch that video 17 times. I counted. They all laughed." That was another thing James had learned to do again. Really laugh. Not the polite chuckle he used to give at business dinners, but actual belly laughs that made his sides hurt. Elena had that effect on people. She found joy in small things. A good sale at the grocery store. A sunny day. A customer at the diner who left a nice tip. She celebrated these tiny victories like they were major achievements, and James found himself doing the same. "Guess what?" Sophia said during dinner one night. "I got accepted into the summer science program at Columbia." James's face lit up. "Sophia, that's amazing. That program is incredibly competitive." "There's just one problem," Sophia said, her excitement fading. "It cost $1,200. The room got quiet. $1,200. To James's old self, that was nothing. He'd spent more than that on single bottles of wine. But to Elena, working 2 jobs to keep them afloat, it might as well have been $12 million. "We'll figure it out," Elena said firmly. "Maybe I can pick up extra shifts. Or I can help," James interrupted. "James, no. Why not? I'm good at finding solutions." "Let me at least try," Elena shook her head. "Because you've already done so much. And because we can't keep relying on other people. Sophia and we have to stand on our own." James understood her pride. He respected it, but it frustrated him too. Here was a brilliant kid who deserved every opportunity, and money, something James knew he'd have again eventually, was standing in the way. Over the next few days, James worked behind the scenes. He reached out to the program directors at Columbia, people he'd met years ago at fundraisers. He explained Sophia's situation, her grades, her potential, her circumstances. "I can't make any promises," one director said, "but send me her application. We have some scholarship funds for situations exactly like this." James didn't tell Elena what he was doing. He knew she'd tell him to stop, to let Sophia fight her own battles. But he also knew that sometimes fighting your own battles meant accepting help when it was offered. Meanwhile, James's own situation was slowly shifting. His lawyers had finally found the evidence they needed. Douglas had been sloppy in his schemes. There were emails, documents, proof of manipulation. The board was starting to see through his lies. "We're close," his lead attorney told him on a call. Maybe 2 more weeks and we can get you access to your accounts again. 2 more weeks. James should have been thrilled. Instead, he felt anxious. Once he had his money back, everything would change. People would treat him differently. Elena might treat him differently. He realized he didn't want that. One evening, James arrived at Elena's apartment to find her crying at the kitchen table. Sophia was in her room, pretending not to listen. "What's wrong?" James asked, sitting down across from her. Elena looked up, her eyes red. "I'm so tired, James. I'm so incredibly tired. I work 16 hours a day. I barely see my sister. I can't remember the last time I had a full night's sleep. And no matter how hard I work, we're always just barely making it. One emergency, one unexpected expense, and we're done." James reached across the table and took her hand. "I know. Do you, though? I mean, really? You're this brilliant businessman. Even broke, you have skills that will get you back on top eventually. But me, I clean toilets, James. I serve coffee. What kind of future is that?" "Hey," James said gently. "Look at me. You are one of the smartest, most capable people I've ever met. You manage money better than most CFOs I know. You run a household, raise a teenager, work 2 jobs, and still find time to help other people. You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Elena wiped her eyes. "What?" "I see someone who could run a company. I see someone who could manage anything she set her mind to. The only difference between you and the people in corner offices is opportunity, and that's something that can change. Pretty words don't pay rent, James." "No, but they're true. Elena, you paid for my hotel room when you had every reason not to. You taught me what real kindness looks like. You showed me what actually matters in life. That's not nothing. That's everything." Elena smiled despite her tears. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. Most of the time I'm just figuring it out as I go. But I meant what I said. You're exceptional, Elena. You just haven't had anyone telling you that enough." A few days later, Sophia burst into the apartment waving an envelope. "I got it. I got the scholarship. Full ride for the summer program." Elena screamed and hugged her sister. James stood in the doorway, smiling, not mentioning the calls he'd made. Some gifts were better given anonymously. That night, after Sophia went to bed, Elena and James sat on the small balcony of her apartment. It wasn't much, just enough space for 2 chairs, but the view of the city was beautiful in its own way. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "For what?" "For helping with Sophia's scholarship. Don't deny it. I know you had something to do with it." James started to protest, but Elena held up her hand. "It's okay. I've learned something these past few weeks. Accepting help isn't weakness. It's just being human. You've taught me that." "You taught me more," James said. "Before I met you, I thought success meant money, power, status. Now I know those things are just tools. They're not the point. The point is what you do with them, how you treat people, whether you leave things better than you found them." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "What are you going to do when you get your money back?" "Because we both know that's coming. Your lawyers sound confident." James had been thinking about this a lot. "Honestly, I don't know. A few months ago, I would have just gone back to my old life, but that life feels empty now. I've changed. I can't go back to pretending board meetings and profit margins are the most important things in the world. So what will you do?" "Maybe build something different, something that actually helps people. I don't know exactly what yet, but I know I want you to be part of it." Elena laughed. "James, I'm a housekeeper and a waitress. What could I possibly contribute to whatever business you build? Everything. You understand people in a way I never did. You know what real struggle looks like. You know how to stretch resources, how to make things work with nothing. Those are skills, Elena, valuable skills. Most importantly, you have integrity. That's rarer than you think in business, and you're serious. Completely. When this is all over, when I get my company back or build a new one, I want you with me. As a partner, not an employee. We'd figure out the details together, but I'm serious. You've got more business sense in your little finger than most MBAs have in their entire degree." Elena looked out at the city. "That's the craziest thing anyone's ever said to me." Crazy doesn't mean wrong. Inside the apartment, they could hear Sophia talking on the phone with a friend, excited about her summer program. The sound of a teenager's laughter, full of hope and possibilities. "That's what I want to build," James said, gesturing toward the sound. "Things that create opportunities like that. Things that help people like you and Sophia, real people with real dreams. When you get your money back, you'll remember you said that? James looked at Elena seriously. I'll remember everything about this time. It's been the most important period of my life. Losing everything taught me what everything actually means. They talked for hours that night, about dreams and plans, about what kind of community center Elena wanted to build someday, about how Sophia wanted to be an engineer, about how James wanted to rebuild his reputation as someone who actually made a difference. When James finally left around midnight, walking back to his hotel room that he was still somehow managing to pay for week by week, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt alive, really alive. Not because of business deals or bank accounts, but because he'd connected with real people, because he'd found friendship that wasn't transactional, because he'd discovered purpose beyond profit. His phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer. Major breakthrough. Should have access to accounts by end of week. You're going to get everything back. James stared at the message for a long time. James woke up on a Thursday morning to 17 missed calls from his lawyers. His heart raced as he called back. We did it, his lead attorney said. Douglas made a critical error. We found emails where he admitted to manipulating the board. It's over. By Monday, you'll have full access to everything again. Monday. 4 days away. James should have been celebrating. Instead, he sat on the edge of his hotel bed, feeling oddly empty. Getting his money back was good, obviously, but it felt like the end of something important. This time of struggle, of living like a regular person, of really connecting with Elena and Sophia, it had meant something. He got dressed and headed to Elena's apartment. It was Saturday, which meant they'd planned to help her move to the new place the real estate developer had held for her. The apartment was smaller than her current one, but it was in a better building and the rent was actually manageable. When James arrived, he found Elena's apartment in chaos, boxes everywhere, furniture half-packed, and Sophia trying to figure out how to disassemble her bed frame. You know what I realized? Elena said, taping up another box. I've lived here for 3 years and I don't actually own that much stuff. Everything I have fits in maybe 15 boxes. James thought about his penthouse. He probably had 15 boxes just for his suits. That's not a bad thing, he said. Means moving will be easier. They spent the entire day packing, carrying boxes down 3 flights of stairs, and loading them into a borrowed truck. James's expensive suit was ruined by sweat and dust, but he didn't care. This felt real, meaningful. By evening, they had everything moved into the new apartment. It was a modest place on the 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms and a living room that served as a kitchen too. But it had good light, and the building was well maintained. It's perfect, Sophia said, already planning where her posters would go. Elena stood in the middle of the empty living room, looking exhausted, but happy. We did it. We actually did it. You did it, James corrected. You found a way to make it work. I just made a few phone calls. A few phone calls that saved us, Elena said. James, can I ask you something? And I want an honest answer. Of course. Your lawyer must have called you by now, about your company. You're getting it all back, aren't you? James nodded slowly. Monday. Full access to everything. Elena smiled, but her eyes were sad. That's good. Really good. You deserve it after everything Douglas put you through. Why do you look sad then? Because everything's about to change. You'll go back to your old life. The fancy suits, the big meetings, the penthouse. You won't have time to help Sophia with calculus or fix leaky sinks anymore. Elena. It's okay. She interrupted. I get it. This was just temporary for you. A weird chapter in your life story. But you've been so good to us and I'll never forget that. James felt something break inside his chest. You think that's what this was? Just some temporary thing? Elena, the past 2 months have been more real than the last 10 years of my life. But you're a billionaire, James. I'm a housekeeper. Once you get your money back, we're going to be in completely different worlds again. That's only true if I let it be true. And I won't. James pulled out his phone and made a call. Hey, this is James Patterson. Yes, I know it's been a while. Listen, I need office space. Something in Queens. No, not Manhattan. Queens. And I need it by Wednesday. I don't care about the price, just make it happen. He hung up and looked at Elena. I meant what I said last week. When I get my company back, I'm going to build something different, something that matters, and I want you to be part of it. James, I don't have any business experience. Neither did I when I started. But you know what you do have? You understand what real people need. You've survived on minimum wage while raising a teenager. You've made every dollar stretch to its absolute limit. That's the kind of knowledge I need. Over the weekend, James started putting his plan into motion. He couldn't access his money yet, but he had his reputation back. Word was spreading that Douglas had been exposed. People were starting to return James's calls. He pitched his idea to the real estate developer who'd helped with Elena's apartment. I want to start a community investment fund. We identify talented people from underserved communities and give them resources to build businesses. Not just money, but mentorship, connections, real support. The developer leaned back in his chair. That's not going to make you rich, Patterson. I'm already rich. This is about doing something that actually matters. All right, I'm in. Put me down for $200,000 once you get your accounts unfrozen. James made 20 more calls that weekend. Some people shut him down, but others listened. By Sunday night, he had commitments for nearly $3 million from investors who believed in his vision. Monday morning came. James sat in a conference room with his lawyers as they executed the final paperwork. Douglas had been forced out. The board had apologized. James had control of his company again. His lead attorney handed him a new credit card. Welcome back, Mr. Patterson. Your accounts are fully restored. James looked at the black card in his hand. 2 months ago, this card getting declined had felt like the end of the world. Now he realized it had been the beginning of something better. His first purchase with the restored account. He paid back Elena's credit card, not the $450 she'd spent on his hotel room. He paid off the entire balance, which had grown to over $800 from interest and Sophia's school expenses. Then he went to Elena's new apartment. She opened the door in her work uniform, about to leave for a shift. James, what are you doing here? I got my money back. Elena's face fell. Oh, that's great. Really great. Stop looking at me like I'm about to disappear from your life. Check your credit card balance. Elena pulled out her phone, confused. When she saw the screen, her eyes went wide. James, what did you do? Paid you back. With interest. This is too much. It's exactly right. Elena, I need to show you something. Can Sophia come too? 20 minutes later, James, Elena, and Sophia stood in front of a small office building in Queens. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and well located. I leased this space, James said. It's going to be headquarters for a new foundation, the Rodriguez-Patterson Community Investment Fund. Elena stared at him. The what? I told you I wanted to build something that mattered. This is it. We're going to invest in people from neighborhoods like this. People with talent and dreams but no opportunities. We'll provide funding, mentorship, business training, everything they need to succeed. James, I can't. Yes, you can. Elena, you're the smartest person I know when it comes to real-world problems. You've lived them. You understand them. I need that perspective. I need your voice at the table when we make decisions about who to help and how. Sophia was practically bouncing with excitement. Elena, say yes, this is amazing. But I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither do I, James admitted. We'll figure it out together. That's how the best things get built. Not by people who have all the answers, but by people who are willing to ask the right questions. Elena looked at the building, then at James, then at her sister. What about my jobs? I can't just quit. We need the income. That's the other thing. The foundation will have a salary budget. I'm offering you a position as co-director. $60,000 a year to start, with benefits. Elena's knees literally buckled. Sophia had to grab her arm. $60,000, James, I make $22,000 a year right now. That's life-changing money. That's the point. And it's not charity. It's a job. A real job that you're absolutely qualified for. You'll work harder in this role than you ever worked cleaning hotel rooms, but you'll be building something that helps people like you. People who just need a chance. Tears were streaming down Elena's face. Why are you doing this? Because 2 months ago, a 19-year-old housekeeper gave up her entire emergency fund to help a stranger. That one act of kindness changed my whole life. Now I want to create a world where more people like you get the opportunities they deserve. James pulled out a folder. This is the business plan. Take the weekend. Read it. Think about it. If you want to do this, we start next Monday. If not, no hard feelings. But Elena, I really hope you say yes. I can't do this without you. That evening, James went back to his penthouse for the first time in 2 months. He'd arranged for a cleaning service to maintain it while he was gone, so everything looked perfect. Pristine, untouched and incredibly lonely. He walked through rooms full of expensive furniture and felt nothing. This place wasn't home. It never had been. It was just where he kept his stuff. His phone rang. It was Elena. I read the business plan, she said. And? It's crazy. Completely crazy. You're planning to give millions of dollars to people most investors wouldn't look at twice. I know. The failure rate is going to be high. Some of these investments won't work out. I know that too. There was a long pause. When do I start? James felt a smile spread across his face. Really, you're saying yes? I'm terrified. But yes. On one condition. Name it. You have to promise me this isn't just a phase, that you're not going to get bored in 6 months and move on to something else. Because if we do this, we're going to be changing people's lives. They'll be counting on us. I need to know you're serious. The Rodriguez-Patterson Community Investment Fund officially opened its doors on a Monday morning in late October. The office was modest but professional. Elena had insisted on that. If we're going to do this right, we need to look legitimate, she'd said. James stood in the main room, looking at the simple furniture they'd chosen together. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Just functional space where real work would happen. Elena arrived at 8:30 looking nervous in a new business outfit. She'd insisted on buying it with her own money, refusing to let James help. I need to know I earned this, she told him. Ready for day one? James asked, absolutely terrified, but also excited. Is that normal? That's exactly right. If you weren't scared, I'd be worried you didn't understand what we're taking on. Their first task was developing the application process. They needed a way for people to apply for funding that wasn't intimidating or overly complicated. Most business loan applications are designed to exclude people, Elena observed as they reviewed traditional forms. They ask for things like 3 years of tax returns or business plan with financial projections. How is someone working 3 minimum wage jobs supposed to have that? So what do we ask for instead? Elena thought for a moment. We ask them to tell us their story, what problem they're trying to solve, why they're the right person to solve it, what they need to make it happen. Simple questions that anyone can answer. They spent the next week designing the process, testing it with people from Elena's neighborhood. One woman wanted to start a daycare because the neighborhood had nowhere affordable for working parents to leave their kids. Another man wanted to open a bicycle repair shop, teaching kids the trade while serving the community. These are exactly the kind of ideas we should fund, James said after meeting with the bicycle repair applicant. He's not going to become a millionaire, but he'll employ people, teach valuable skills, and fill a real need. That's success. Their first major decision came when they had to choose their initial investments. They'd received 47 applications in the first 2 weeks. The stories were heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. Single mothers trying to start home businesses. Immigrants with professional skills who couldn't get hired because of language barriers. Teenagers with brilliant ideas but zero capital. Every application represented someone's dream, someone's hope for a better life. How do we choose? Elena asked, looking overwhelmed. They all deserve a chance. We can't help everyone at once, James said gently. So we start small. We pick 5 projects for our first round. We support them completely, learn from the experience, then expand. They debated for hours about each application. Elena would catch things James missed. This restaurant idea looks good on paper, but look at her budget. She's underestimating food costs by at least 30%. She'll run out of money in 3 months. James would catch things Elena missed. This application seems weak, but look at her track record. She's been running informal catering from her apartment for 2 years. She has actual customers. That's proof of concept. They finally selected their first 5 investments, $20,000 each plus mentorship and business support. It wasn't much compared to traditional startup funding, but for these applicants, it was life-changing. One of their first investments was a woman named Patricia, who wanted to start a house cleaning service. She'd been cleaning houses independently for years but wanted to grow, hire other women, provide benefits and fair wages. "Why cleaning?" James asked during her interview. Patricia smiled. "Because I know every woman cleaning houses in this neighborhood. We all struggle with the same problems. Clients who don't pay, no benefits, no security. I want to create something better. Something that proves cleaning is real work that deserves real respect." Elena was nodding enthusiastically. "How many people do you want to hire?" "Start with 5. Within 2 years, maybe 20. Women who need flexible schedules because they have kids. Women who are strong workers but don't have fancy degrees." They funded Patricia on the spot. Another investment went to a young man named Kevin, who wanted to create a computer repair and tutoring service. He'd taught himself everything about computers by watching YouTube videos and practicing on machines he found in dumpsters. "Show me what you can do," James said, pointing to a broken laptop on his desk. Kevin had it running in 15 minutes. This just needed a new power supply and the hard drive reseated. Simple fix, but most people would have thrown it away. And the tutoring side? "Kids in my neighborhood want to learn tech skills, but they can't afford classes. I want to teach them for free or cheap. The repair business funds the teaching. That's the model." They funded Kevin too. Each investment came with regular check-ins. James and Elena met with their entrepreneurs weekly, helping solve problems, make connections, adjust strategies. It was exhausting work, but incredibly rewarding. 2 months in, Patricia's cleaning service had hired 3 women and had a waiting list of clients. Kevin was repairing computers and teaching coding to 15 kids in a community center basement. The other 3 investments were progressing too. A bakery that was becoming a neighborhood fixture, a handyman service that was booked solid, a tutoring center that was helping kids raise their grades. "We're actually doing it," Elena said one evening after a particularly good day. "We're making a difference." "You sound surprised." "I am a little. When you first proposed this, part of me thought it was just a rich guy's fantasy. But it's working, James. It's really working." The local news caught wind of their story. A reporter came to interview them, intrigued by the Billionaire and former housekeeper partnership. "Mr. Patterson, why this model?" the reporter asked. "Why not just donate to existing charities?" "Because charity, as valuable as it is, creates dependency. Investment creates opportunity. We're not giving handouts. We're funding businesses that will employ people, serve communities, and create wealth that stays in neighborhoods that need it." "And Ms. Rodriguez, what's your role in all this?" Elena smiled. "I make sure we don't lose sight of reality. It's easy to have big ideas when you've always had money. I'm here to make sure we understand what our entrepreneurs are actually going through, because I've lived it." The story ran on the evening news, and suddenly, the Rodriguez-Patterson Fund was getting attention. More applications flooded in. Business leaders called wanting to donate. Other foundations reached out to learn about their model. James's reputation, which had been destroyed by Douglas's betrayal, was rebuilding. But it was different now. He wasn't famous for making money. He was recognized for trying to share it meaningfully. One afternoon, James got a call from his old business partner, Douglas. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. "James, I saw you on the news," Douglas said. "Is there a point to this call?" I wanted to say, "What you're doing is impressive, really. And I wanted to apologize for what I did. The board saw through me eventually. I lost everything. My reputation is ruined." James felt no satisfaction in hearing that. "That's between you and your conscience, Douglas. How did you do it? How did you just move on and build something new? I learned what actually matters, and that's not something I can explain to you. You have to figure it out yourself." After hanging up, James realized he didn't feel angry at Douglas anymore. That betrayal had led him to Elena, to this new purpose. In a weird way, Douglas had done him a favor. 6 months into the fund's operation, they held their first graduation ceremony. The 5 initial investments had all succeeded. Patricia's cleaning service now employed 12 women. Kevin's computer business was training 30 kids. The other 3 were thriving too. Elena gave a speech at the ceremony, standing in front of the entrepreneurs, their families, and a room full of supporters. 6 months ago, I was working 2 jobs, barely making rent. Today I'm standing here because one person showed me that circumstances don't define us, that where we start doesn't determine where we finish, that kindness and opportunity can change everything. She looked at James. Mr. Patterson and I come from completely different worlds, but we learned that those worlds don't have to stay separate. We can build bridges. We can create pathways. We can make sure that talent matters more than zip codes. The audience erupted in applause. James felt his eyes getting wet. This was success. Real success. Not numbers in a bank account, but lives actually improving. After the ceremony, Sophia ran up to them excited. Elena, Mr. P. Did you see? Patricia hired Mrs. Chen from our building. She was working at that awful restaurant that never paid her. Now she has benefits and everything. That's when it hit James, the ripple effect. Their investment in Patricia didn't just help Patricia. It helped Mrs. Chen. It helped Patricia's other employees. It helped the clients who now had reliable professional service. It helped the whole neighborhood by showing what was possible. One investment was creating dozens of positive outcomes. Elena squeezed his hand. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For keeping your promise. For not going back to your old life. For being the kind of person who follows through. Thank you for teaching me what following through actually means. That night, James and Elena sat in their office looking at applications for their second round of funding. 1 year after the fund's launch, James and Elena sat in their office reviewing the numbers. They'd invested in 32 businesses. 28 were still operating. 4 had failed, which hurt, but Elena had taught James that failure was part of the process. That's an 87% success rate, Elena said, looking at the spreadsheet. James, do you know what the normal success rate is for small businesses? Around 50%. We're crushing it. We're crushing it because of you, James said. Your screening process, your support system, your real-world knowledge. That's what makes the difference. The fund had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. Major corporations were donating. Wealthy individuals were joining as mentors. Media outlets were calling them the most innovative approach to community development in decades. But more importantly, real lives were changing. Patricia's cleaning service now employed 43 women across 3 boroughs. She'd created a model that other cities were studying. Fair wages, benefits, flexible scheduling for parents, even a small profit-sharing program. Kevin's computer business had expanded into a full technology training center. He'd partnered with local high schools, teaching kids skills that were landing them actual jobs. 2 of his students had already gotten hired by tech companies, starting careers they never thought possible. The bakery they funded had become so popular that the owner, a woman named Linda, had opened a second location. She was hiring exclusively from the neighborhood, teaching people the trade, creating opportunities. Every success story felt personal to James and Elena because they knew these people. They'd sat with them through their struggles. They'd celebrated their victories. They'd helped them pivot when things went wrong. We need to expand, Elena said one morning. We're getting 500 applications a month now. We can't keep up. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we need to open offices in other cities. The model works. Why keep it just in New York? James smiled. You know, a year ago you were scared to run one office. Now you want to go national? A year ago I'd never done this before. Now I know we can do it. James, we've proven this works. People in Chicago, LA, Houston, they need this too. We have a responsibility to scale up. Over the next 6 months, they opened satellite offices in 5 cities. Elena traveled constantly, training new staff, setting up operations, adapting their model to different communities. She'd transformed from a nervous housekeeper into a confident leader. Sophia, now 17 and thriving, loved teasing her sister about it. Remember when you were scared to lead a single meeting? Now you're on conference calls with mayors. Don't remind me, Elena laughed. I still get nervous before every big presentation. But you do it anyway. That's what makes you brave. James had transformed too. His old company, Patterson Technologies, was still successful. But he'd stepped back from daily operations, hiring a CEO to run it while he focused on the fund. His wealth had actually grown because he wasn't obsessing over it constantly. Turns out letting go was good for business, but the fund was his real passion now. This was the work that made him excited to wake up every morning. One afternoon, James and Elena met with a group of university researchers who wanted to study their model. The lead professor was fascinated by their success rate. "What you're doing shouldn't work," she said, looking at the data. "You're investing in high-risk entrepreneurs in difficult circumstances. Traditional models say this should fail, but it's succeeding at an incredible rate." "Why?" Elena didn't hesitate. "Because we actually care. We're not looking at spreadsheets and risk assessments. We're looking at people. We know their names, their families, their struggles. When you invest in someone as a person, not as a number, they show up differently. And we don't abandon them after the check is written." James added, "We're partners. When they struggle, we help them problem solve. When they succeed, we celebrate with them. It's not transactional. It's relational," the professor nodded. "That's what I suspected. You've essentially recreated what families and communities used to do for each other, but with professional structure and capital backing." "Exactly," Elena said. "We're just doing what my mom did for our neighbors, what my community did for us when things got tough. We're just doing it at scale." The media attention kept growing. James and Elena were invited to speak at conferences, business schools, and government hearings. Their story resonated because it was real. No spin, no corporate polish, just honest talk about what worked and what didn't. At one conference, a business student asked James the question everyone wanted to know. "Mr. Patterson, you lost your company temporarily. If that hadn't happened, would any of this exist?" James thought carefully before answering. "Probably not. I was so focused on building my empire that I'd lost sight of why I was building it. Getting my accounts frozen forced me to see the world differently. Meeting Elena taught me what actually matters." "Do you regret your old life?" "I regret how I lived it. I don't regret the success or the wealth, but I regret measuring my worth by those things. I regret not asking what my wealth was actually for until I lost access to it." Elena spoke up from beside him. "Can I add something? I think a lot of people misunderstand this story. They think James became a better person because he lost money and lived like I did. But that's not really it. He became better because he started paying attention. You don't have to lose everything to do that. You just have to care enough to look beyond your own circumstances." The audience gave them a standing ovation. That evening, James and Elena grabbed dinner at the same diner where Elena used to work. The owner, who'd watched their whole journey, gave them their meal for free no matter how many times they tried to pay. "You two put this neighborhood on the map," he said proudly. "People come from all over now just to see where you started." After he walked away, Elena shook her head in amazement. "This is so surreal. A year and a half ago, I was serving coffee here. Now we're running a national organization. How does it feel?" "Terrifying, amazing, overwhelming, all of it at once." She paused. "James, I need to tell you something. I got an offer this week." James felt his stomach drop. "An offer?" "A big nonprofit wants me to be their national director. 6-figure salary. Major organization. They said my story and experience make me the perfect candidate." That's incredible, Elena. You should take it." I turned it down. "What? Why?" Elena looked at him seriously. "Because what we're building here matters more. We're not just another nonprofit distributing grants. We're creating a model that actually works. We're proving that investment in people, real investment, changes communities. I can't walk away from that. But the money is less than what fulfillment is worth. You taught me that, remember? Besides, I negotiated a raise with you. I'm not completely selfless." James laughed with relief. "You can have whatever you want. You know that? I don't want whatever I want. I want to keep building this with you. We're partners, James, equal partners. This is our thing, not just your thing that you let me help with. I've always seen you as an equal partner." "I know. That's why I'm staying." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the diner buzzing with evening customers around them. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" James said quietly. "Of course. When my card got declined that day, I wasn't just embarrassed. I was terrified. For 20 years, my identity had been tied to my success, my wealth, my status. Suddenly, none of that worked. I didn't know who I was without it. I felt like I'd disappeared, and now I know exactly who I am. I'm the person who builds things that matter with people who matter. That's my identity, not the bank account or the company or any of that. This work, these relationships, this purpose," Elena smiled. "You know what's funny? I used to be embarrassed that I was just a housekeeper. I thought I hadn't made anything of myself. But now I realize I was always exactly who I needed to be. Every struggle, every hard shift, every time I had to stretch a dollar, it was preparing me for this. We're a good team. The best team. 2 years after the fund started, they held a massive celebration. All of their funded entrepreneurs came, bringing their families, their employees, their communities. The small office they'd started in couldn't hold everyone, so they rented out a community center. Patricia stood up to speak, representing all the entrepreneurs.